En weer 'n keer kan ek en Tiaan 'n bietjie sit te gesels soos wat ons gedoen het 'n rukkie terug. Tiaan, baie dankie. Tiaan, Head of Proposition by Old Mutual Wealth, very knowledgeable guy. Ek en Tiaan, ek geniet dit verskriklik om met hom te gesels. Daar's nie baie ouens wat op so jong ouderdom die kennis het wat Tiaan het. En hy kom altyd met interessante idees. So Tiaan, baie dankie dat ons weer vandag 'n bietjie kan gesels. Bietjie 'n paar vrae doen. En ons sal maar weer soos laas so 'n bietjie switch English Afrikaans net om almal happy te hou.
Ja, ek wil net sê Corneille, jy moes my gesê het oor die pink sokkies, want ek kom nou baie bland in my navy blue teenoor jou beautiful pink sokkies, ja.
Ja, my kinders het my hierdie sokkies gegee, as 'n Kersgeskenk, en ek moet sê dis die lekkerste sokkies wat ek in my lewe gedra het. So ek dra hulle baie.
Hulle dra lekker, hulle lyk lekker. Dink is 'n goeie begin vir 'n goeie geselskap.
Absoluut. Okay, so Tiaan, fantastiese plek wat jy vandag vir ons kry, baie dankie, very nice. Kom ons praat eerstens die groot ding die afgelope tyd, Mr. Donald Trump and his election. What do you think is going to be the impact of the US elections, and specifically Trump now being in charge again, being the boss again?
Yeah, I think the one thing I've taken out of this election is if you still listen to polls and conventional media, I wouldn't get my information there. In 2016, they predicted Hillary Clinton would win. They were wrong. In 2020, they predicted a Trump win. Wrong. In 2024, they said it'd be extremely close. Most likely, thanks to Kamala coming in at the end, it would be a Kamala victory, and they were wrong again. The one place I do think, and I'll get to what I think will happen in a moment, but the one place I've been following quite closely, and I think you as well, is what's happening on social media. And the amount of clips I just saw on TikTok of people being Trump supporters, and you looked at this kind of thinking, yes, is something amiss between what I'm seeing on social media and what, legacy media is saying. So I think that's the first thing. Don't trust the polls, even legacy media, and also legacy media is so biased. If you look at Fox News, that's a very right-wing, pro-Trump outlet. If you look at CNN, MSNBC, that's more left-wing.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't trust that. If you look at markets, there was a big reaction to Trump winning the presidency, winning the Senate, and winning the House. That means there's a lot more things that he can actually do. The short-term impact of that is you had a much stronger dollar. So again, if you're investing directly offshore, but you're still looking at your values in rands, which you probably shouldn't, that was good for you. You still saw quite a bit of a spur in the S&P 500, which is the 500 biggest company on the American exchange. Again, because Trump is viewed as being more favorable for markets. He's more of a businessman, he's more of a capitalist, pure capitalist, if you can call him that, but he's quite different to your conventional Republicans. So it does make it a bit difficult to predict where we'll go, because I think the consent was that because of the massive run you've seen in America, it's probably more a better environment. You would have seen a dollar sell-off. In other words, the dollar would have gotten against the rand, wouldn't have been as strong. And we also thought it was a good time for emerging markets. You saw recent markets experiencing that as well. So my view, and I'm not an economist, I'm not a political analyst or an investment analyst, but I think if I look at the views of our research team, I think the one thing I would take out from there is I think there will still be some growth in America. I don't think we're saying take all of your money out of the States, bring it back to SA. But I think the number one thing now is be diversified. I think there is a lot of potential in emerging markets, specifically SA. We've been underweight for or undervalued quite some time. US markets are overvalued, but I don't think there's no value left. So if I was an investor, I would make sure, Corneille, when I'm sitting with you discussing my investment goals, the key thing for me now is be diversified. I don't think anybody should be taking a call on just 100% offshore or 100% local. Make sure you're in a multi-asset portfolio, and even more important, because we always talk about, is it local, is it offshore? If you are going offshore, make sure you're in the correct structure, that you don't get penalized by rand weakening over the long term. If you're investing local, again, make sure you are diversified.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think I agree with you 100% with regards to that. And years ago, before we could actually invest offshore, I don't know if you remember way back when, before we had the allowances and everything, and we were 100% invested in local markets. Then at some point, it was opened up, and then the consensus way back then was basically make sure you've got about 10 to 20% offshore, not more than that.
Yeah.
And over the years, the diversification has been moved over to these days when you speak to or you listen to most people that speak about investments, it's like the South African market is very small. The global market is much bigger. You should be 70 to 80% offshore and global. So would you agree that that is still a good ratio in terms of percentages, in terms of how you should be invested, especially if you are an investor that there's a long time period there?
Yeah, so I think it's a bit, there's a couple of caveats to the answer. The first one is, are you drawing an income, yes or no? So if you're drawing an income, I would say it maybe shifts it slightly. So it depends on the goal. I think even if you're drawing an income, our view is 25 to 50% offshore as a starting point. And the reason for that is that most people have the bulk of their wealth tied up in South Africa. Your properties here, your businesses here. And also a lot of the things you're buying is not just tied to the rand. So a lot of your expenses are actually tied to other currencies, specifically the dollar. Secondly, I do want to touch on what you said there about having more exposure or limited opportunities in our country. If you look at the last 5-6 years, stocks like Nvidia, which is a company that provides the processing chips for artificial intelligence, people always talk about Bitcoin. That's been up by 500% over 5 years. Nvidia's up by 2,500%. In our country, you only have about 80 investable stocks. And the biggest technology stock is Naspers.
Yeah.
You don't have access to those opportunities that you would normally have in the US. I'm by no means saying go buy Nvidia. I just think it makes the case for diversification much stronger offshore.
Absolutely.
Also, don't invest offshore if you think the rand is going to weaken. It's more for getting access to diversification in your portfolio. So therefore, our view is even if you're drawing an income, it's probably somewhere 25 to 50%. If it's a long-term objective, like I'm saving here 30, 40 years, I want to be diversified, then you could increase that allocation even more.
Yeah.
But it would depend on person to person. But I think the days of having all of your eggs tied up in one country, in one continent, linked to the rand, I just think those days are not there anymore because we've seen more and more companies on our local exchange just not be there. I mean, think about, I think it was 2000, we had close to 700 companies on the all-share index. We now have less than 300.
Yeah.
I mean, that's less than half. So just your opportunity set alone has reduced.
Yeah, and I think the important thing that you keep on touching on is diversification. I think that when you speak to clients, in my world, when I speak to clients, I think one of the things that clients always come back to over and over again is the rand is going to weaken. I want to be invested offshore because the rand is going to weaken. The rand is going to weaken. It's possible, but it's also possible that it's not going to happen. If we go back to our first democratic election way back when the old rand was still 1 rand to the dollar because it was manipulated like that. When we went into that election, I don't know if you remember, but I remember the stories about the rand is going to tank. It's going to be 40 rand to a dollar. It's taken quite a long time to get to 18 rand to a dollar. And I think that in terms of diversification, it is more important to be in the right market, in the right portfolio, than what it is to worry about what the swing is going to be in terms of the rand dollar.
Yeah, I almost want to add on top of that. I think the one thing that I think you'll see it even more than I do, the one misconception that people almost focus too much on always is, what's the rand going to do over the long term? Yeah. And you've seen, to your point, 2000 or 2010, the rand strengthened significantly over a big part of that period. So again, investing offshore is not because you think the rand's going to weaken. Yes, it has weakened on average about 6% the last, call it 20, 30 years. And if I had to flip a coin and bet, I'd probably say I think it's going to do that into the future, but that's not why I'm investing offshore.
That's correct.
But the other thing that I think you probably see a lot with clients is people say, should I go with company A, company B, company C? But the most important thing is the asset allocation.
Yes.
So whether you're going into a fund with company A, and you like the brand, it's more important what they're investing into than whether you like the brand or not.
Yeah.
And I think that's something you can probably share a bit more experience on, but people are so fixated on the rand and the company brand I'm investing in, when the most important thing, the engine of the investment, is what are those assets that I'm actually investing into?
Yeah. And therefore, you should be investing with an investment company that you buy into their philosophy. If you want to have security and you want to know that you're going to get good growth over a long period of time, go with a company that stands for that. If you want to go and you want to have extreme and excessive growth and can take the risk that's going to come with it because you can take excessive losses, then go with a company like that. Decide whether you are a gambler or an investor.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, you are too. Let's move on to something different. Tiaan, I have had so many questions on this, and I think it's something that confuses a lot of people. I think a lot of financial advisors get confused by the clients, everything. Capital gains tax, CGT. Can you, in simple terms, explain to us how does CGT get calculated? And then going hand in hand with that little thing about how the CGT get calculated, because obviously it has to do with every individual and their personal tax rates. Over and above the explanation is then, when should a client then be invested in a unit trust type of fund, or when should they be in an endowment type of fund? Please.
It's such a good question, and I'm going to try and do my best to simplify it. So, capital gains tax is where SARS or the government says, I'm going to tax you on any assets where the value has increased over time. Now, very important, some assets are exempt or you have exemption. So in other words, it means the full growth won't be taxed. And when I say growth, the increase in what you bought something for versus what the value is now.
Okay.
So as an example, if you buy a property and it grows from $1 million to $3 million, some of that growth, you get an exemption from SARS. So they say, well, you've had $2 million worth of growth. In other words, increase in value. I'm not going to tax you on all of that. So the first thing to understand is that not all assets attract capital gains tax.
Yes.
Investments normally do attract capital gains tax. So what do we mean by that and how does it work? So if I invest into let's just call it a share portfolio to keep it very simple. I decide, Cornell, I'm coming to you and I've got R1 million. I've now done well, I've saved R1 million and you're going to put together a portfolio for me. Now I'm buying these individual shares. And let's say they're all exactly the same price. I buy 1 million shares at R1. And Cornell, you've put together a great share portfolio for me. It's done extremely well. You've got the right stocks in there. Thanks to all of your expertise and the team that you've partnered with, this portfolio now grows to 2 million. If I were to take the money out, there's no tax if I leave it there. Nothing. It's growing, it's doing its thing. The moment I disinvest any of that, SARS says, okay, your 1 million has now become 2 million. We're going to tax you on the gain, which is simply the growth you've received. Now, how capital gains works in its simplest terms, we take whatever that growth is, that R1 million, and step number one, we times that by 40%. So, okay, R1 million has now grown to 2, that's R1 million gain. Times that by 40%, that's 400,000. That 400,000 gets added to the normal income that you get taxed on. So if you're earning for the year 500,000, there's another 400,000 coming in. And then that will dictate what tax we then apply based on the income tax tables. But ignoring all of that, the simple way you can look at capital gains tax is that if you're on the top tax bracket, you're earning a lot of money, you pay 18% capital gains tax. And how we calculate that is we take R1 million gain times 40%. They call that the inclusion rate. How much is going to be included in your income tax tables? Times your top tax bracket, 45%. That's how we get to 18%. So depending on where you fall on the income tax tables, that dictates what the actual taxes that's going to be applied. It could be as high as 18%. So the gain times 40%, the inclusion rate, that's going to be added to your income tax, times the tax rate according to where you fall on the SARS income tax tables. So the highest amount you'll pay is 18%. The lowest amount is 0.
Okay.
Because before they take that gain, that R1 million, and they times it by the inclusion rate of 40%, every year you get a 40,000 rand exemption. That's also it's only 40,000 for the year, Cornell. We'll leave it.
Like our RA rebates.
Exactly. You'll get something. And if you pass away, that figure goes up to 300,000 for your estate. If you also pass away, if it's for your spouse, there's no capital gains tax. So these are the strategies you can look at. But in simple terms, if you wanted to work out worst case what the capital gains tax on something is, you can just say worst case 18%. Because then we're assuming that you're in the top 45% income tax bracket. Now your question is, well, when will I then use a unit trust? Because if I invested into a unit trust, again, R1 million becomes 2 million. Depending on my tax rate, if I'm in the 45% tax rate, I'm going to pay 18% capital gains tax. So if I'm sitting with you, the one thing we have to look at is, well, how much am I earning? How long will I still be earning? So how long am I going to be in this tax rate? And at any point in time, whereby your tax rate on the income tax tables, it becomes more than 30%, you probably want to go into what's called an endowment. The only reason is for an endowment, as opposed to paying capital gains at 45% or being added to your taxable income, like with the unit trust, an endowment says, you know what, I'm not going to add it to your taxable income. We, as the investment provider or the insurance company, will tax it at 30% as opposed to potentially 45%. But that's the thing, what makes your job very difficult as a financial advisor, which is why you're the one that takes on much more stress than hopefully I do, is you've got to look not just at what the person's income tax bracket is today, you've got to look at 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when they're in retirement, and then you've got to make a call. So it makes it a balancing act. But I think for most clients, unit trusts are probably fine because they're not in the 45% bracket. They maybe not using their capital gains tax exemptions, but there are a lot of clients earning well, and they will keep on earning well, whereby the endowment that limits the tax rate on capital gains tax makes more sense. I hope we've simplified that, but I think that just shows you, again, why you need a financial planner.
Yeah.
Because if you get that wrong, there's quite a bit more tax you're going to pay just based on the structure. You could have even gotten the local versus offshore wrong, or what companies you invest in, but if you just get the structure wrong without partnering with a financial planner, that has a big implication.
Yeah. I think that is exactly why I asked you the question, because one of the questions I get very often, I think that a lot of other financial advisors get, especially when it comes to the capital gains tax or whatever, people want to have the best growth.
Oh.
And sometimes the best growth could be in a good unit trust fund. But because that unit trust fund is going to offer you what you want in terms of return, now you have to understand that once you withdraw the funds, there is that possible capital gains tax implication, and you will be taxed in your hands. And unfortunately, the majority of clients either forget that part or don't understand that part. And it becomes very difficult to advise somebody in terms of an investment that's going to be best suitable to you if you are not going to be educated well enough to understand what the tax implication is going to be when you actually withdraw your investment.
And there's, sorry, if I can add almost two things, Kodai. Sorry, I think you've hit something very important there is when you draw the money out of the investment, the tax doesn't take place then, right? It only takes place next year when you do your e-filing.
That's right.
So now if I take out my R1 million of growth that I've got, I go, oh, this is fantastic. Let's say the capital gains tax is the 18%, so the 40% inclusion times I'm in the 45% bracket. There's 180K I'm going to have to pay to solve. But I've blown the money.
Yeah.
I come to you, but what about, you didn't tell me about the, no, I did tell you, but you've got to put some money aside. But the good thing about capital gains things are the two benefits that I look at when investing is, firstly, if you drew the money from a retirement fund, every R1 you draw there as income is fully taxed up until 45%. Capital gains tax is the highest you'll pay is 18%, and you're only paying tax on growth. So if the investment's gone backwards, you're not going to pay any tax.
Yeah.
So that's at least there's an incentive for growth, and also at least it's capped.
Absolutely, absolutely. So kom ons praat gou 'n bietjie oor 'n lekker dingetjie in die lewe. Egskeidings.
Ja, great topic. Kan
Ja, absoluut. Niemand gaan ons ooit skei nie. Kom ons praat 'n bietjie oor egskeidings. Wanneer dit by egskeiding kom, of jy 'n pensioenfonds het, 'n voorsorgfonds het, 'n uitreëniteit, wat gebeur as ek en my vrou skei? En
Sorry om te hoor, jammer kort.
Ja. Ek hoop nie sy sien die video.
Ons sal dit stil. Kan niemand sal weet. Ja.
Wat gebeur as ek my pensioen of my uitreëniteit of wat ook al met haar moet share? Ek moet vir haar 50% gee volgens die divorce agreement. Wat gebeur? Wanneer kry sy die geld? Wat is die belastingimplikasies vir my? Wat is die belastingimplikasies vir haar? Kan jy ons 'n bietjie daarso 'n touwys maak?
So die snaakse ding oor egskeidings is dat, ek dink jy het ook al 'n paar video's daar gedoen, en ek het ook, en dis die een topic wat ongelooflik baie terugvoer kry. Ek weet nie of mense in ons land beplan om te skei nie, maar ek het ook baie vrae gekry oor two-part en egskeidings. Nou die beginpunt daar is wat jy sê, die divorce agreement. So dis waar ek en jy sit, en dan sê ek, wel, ons het nou ooreengekom met die hof dat ons gaan ons bates so en so skei. En dit word gewoonlik bepaal deur hoe jy getroud is. So dis die eerste ding. So dit beteken nie wat ek sê is op almal van toepassing.
Ja.
Maar kom ons neem aan dat die divorce agreement sê dat Corneille, jy en jou vrou skei, en kom ons sê sy kry 50%. Of kom ons sê jy kry 50%.
Ja,
sy
kan 'n man net vir een keer iets kry.
Ja, sy het meer bates as jy kry 50%. En wat dan gebeur is, jy het een van twee opsies. Jy kan of al die geld vat, so kom ons sê, ons praat van R1 miljoen. Ons R1 miljoen aan 'n afdraaniteit. Jy kan of al daai geld uitvat en dan betaal jy belasting van 18 tot 36% op 'n bedrag van meer as R27.500. Okay. So dis nogal 'n groot bedrag wat jy gaan verloor belasting. As jy wil sê, weet jy, geef my alles uit. Of die ander opsie is jy kan sê, dra dit oor in 'n aftreefonds in my naam. 'n Voorsorgfonds, 'n ander aftreeanniteit ensovoorts. En dan is daar geen belastingimplikasie nou nie.
Ja.
Natuurlik, dan kan jy besluit wanneer jy wil aftree op 55, wat ook al die datum is, kan jy dan gewoonlik jou 1/3 kry, 2/3 met 'n inkomste gee, maar jy het net twee opsies ongelukkig. En die een is betaal baie belasting nou, kry die kontantheid wat baie mense ongelukkig doen. En ek dink jy sien dit moontlik baie dat al daai jare se spaar en belastingvrye groei word onmiddellik uitgetrek en jy betaal, kom ons sê maar 30 of 36% daarop. Of die beter opsie is jy bewaar dit vir jou aftrede, want dis eintlik waarvoor die geld gelos is. So as jy skei, jy kry jou vrou se aftrede, een van twee opsies. Vat die geld uit, maar ek kan nie advies gee nie, maar jy kan, wat jy 10 jaar nie gewoonlik sal mense sê doen nie. Dis daar 'n regte rede is vir dit nie. En dan tweedens, los dit daar aan die tyd vir jou of 'n aftreeproduk vir jouself. En dan kan ons praat oor wat gebeur by 55, miskien 60 ensovoorts.
That's it.
Ja.
En nou, omdat ek nou luister aan my finansiële adviseur, ek gaan nou 50% van my vrou se pensioenfonds kry, maar ek besluit om dit nie om te trek nie, want ek wil nie nou daai belasting betaal. Nou gaan sit ek dit in my eie pensioenfonds. Nou is hierdie 2 miljoen rand pensioenfonds, sy hou 1 miljoen, ek hou 1 miljoen. En albei van ons gaan aan tot en met aftrede. Wat gebeur nou by aftrede? Kry ons albei die 550.000 vrygewing of kry
Baie goeie vraag. Nee, so julle kry nou elkeen julle eie 550.000. Dis die goeie ding. So onthou, meeste aftreefondse nie, almal nie, kan jy net 'n derde uitvat. Daar is sekere fondse soos jy natuurlik weet wat jy kan meer as 'n derde vat. So ten minste die een voordeel as ons nie die geld onttrek het nie, is nie die eerste 27.500 belastingvry nie. Nou is dit ten minste 550.000. So kom ons sê daai miljoen word nou 2 miljoen. En min of meer 'n derde is so 600.000-700.000. Dit beteken ek kan amper die volle derde uitkry, belastingvry, en die 2/3 vir elkeen van ons moet ons nou in 'n belegging sit wat vir ons 'n inkomste moet gee, of 'n living annuity of 'n life annuity waar ons kan eendag stadium praat. Maar ten minste kry jy en jou vrou nou elkeen julle 550.000. Maar dis 'n baie groter bedrag as daai 27.500 as jy dit nou sou uitvat.
So, dames en here, daar's ons nou vir julle great belastingtip. Bly getroud tot op ouderdom 60, dan skei julle, deel julle pensioenfonds en albei van julle kinders.
Net so, nie wat is afsien. Ja. Dat is my
Ek weerhou myself van hierdie gesprek.
Dit is my kommerwekkend het hoe baie mense, hoe sekere video's wat ons gedoen het, ek dink jy en ek albei, die skei saak
Kom baie op. Dit kom baie op.
Ongelooflik baie op, ja.
Wel, ek dink as jy mens gaan kyk na die statistieke, nie net Suid-Afrikaans nie, maar as jy gaan kyk na statistieke wêreldwyd in terme van divorce rates. Dit is ek dink daai intensie van huwelik van hoorie so dis vir die res van my lewe. Ek dink daai intensie het lankal verdwyn. Dus deesdae is dit meer 'n kwessie van okay, kom ons kyk of ons dit daai magic 7 jaar kan doen and then we decide. In any case,
'n 7 jaar die magic nommer, is dit
wel, dit is hulle sê mos 'n 7 jaar is die gemiddeld wanneer jy nou ek weet nie. Verstaan nie maar
ek is al Cornelis se top.
Nee.
7 jaar dan.
Nee, dit is definitief nie. Okay, ons is nie marriage counselors nie. Ons praat oor beleggings. So don't take everything that we say 100% to heart. Okay, Tiaan, then I've got another question. And I think this is a very interesting question. And I'll tell you why I think it's a very interesting question once you've answered it. Must every person have life cover?
Sure, this is almost it's one of those trick questions because you've got a view and I may have a view and may not be the same, but that's a good thing, right? It's
Absolutely.
good that we sometimes disagree. So my first answer is yes. And I'll tell you why I think every single person should consider having life cover. Unless you have absolutely no assets and you have no loved ones and nobody or nothing you care for, don't have life cover.
That's it.
I think there's very few of those people that are available on the world. But the reason I think most people should have life cover is because I think a lot of people don't always appreciate the difference between something called estate solvency and estate liquidity. Estate solvency means that if you pass away, there's more assets than there's liability. So there's a 2 million rand property, you only owe 500,000, so the estate is worth 1.5 if you take it one or the other. It doesn't mean you've got estate liquidity. So if you were to pass away, let's say you've got a 10 million rand property as an example, that's going to your kids. There's still estate to be paid, there's transfer costs, there's executives fees, potentially capital gains tax, and all you've got is the property. Now, how are you going to pay for those estate costs? Because the executor will not transfer that asset until those fees are paid for. They are going to sell that property, and we've seen it happen quite a lot. That's just one example of not having liquidity. The second reason, which is probably the reason for most people in our country, is most people in our country have underfunded retirements. And all that means is there's not enough money if you were to pass away today, support your lifestyle, support your family, support your loved ones, pay off debt. That, I would say, is 90%, 95% of people in our country. So that, to me alone, is a reason for life cover. But the third reason I would also look at it is it's bloody cheap depending on when you take it out.
Yeah.
So as an example, if I were to save 5,000 Rand a month, and which is a big amount of money, I would take quite some time to get to R1 million.
So
5,000 Rand a month in life cover is probably going to get me, based on my age, a significant probably 10, 12, 13, 15 million Rand worth of life cover. And I could even say when I get to that age of, call it 60, or when I think, well, I've got enough assets, I don't need the life cover, I could even ask my kids, listen here, there's a bit of a freebie on my life. Do you want to split the life cover payments between you and then benefit from the life cover? So for me, I think most people should have life cover. I think it's a no-brainer for the reasons I've stated. The only time you probably wouldn't have it is if you're really well off, you have a significant amount of liquid assets, which again, a lot of people don't have. You're doing uber well, and you can say that I've done a proper estate analysis. I've sat with Corday, and there's so much liquidity. I can cover all my final costs. I can leave enough money to leave a legacy, and everything else is covered. So I would say 90 to 95% of people should have life cover, but it's such a grudge purchase for some people. And you would have seen this much more. When you sit with somebody, when there's a passing in the family, there's a death in the family, and you have that conversation, and there was provision made, tell me, isn't that one of the best conversations, even better than getting to a good retirement outcome with somebody?
Absolutely. No, thank you very much. Yes, I asked that for a specific reason. I've actually got a bit of a bugbear with regards to it because, yes, like you say, most people need it. But I do believe there are people that doesn't need it. Like you say, no loved ones, no debts, no liabilities, no problem. And I've just seen this trend of certain financial advisors, brokerages, going to universities and I think exploiting. Personally, I think it's exploitation of students when they get to the point where they are going to graduate and get their degree and they're going to move into the professional market and they do a presentation and it looks fantastic. And then within the next 2-3 months, they write every type of business. There is retirement annuities, life cover, disability, severe illness. And the poor student might have a degree, but they are not financially educated. Yeah. And then by the time that they have been paying this thing for 6 months or 8 months and they can't afford it or they don't need it and they only realize it then. Yeah. Anyway, so that's why I've got a bugbear about it, because I do feel that sometimes in our industry, certain sections of our population gets exploited. Yes. It is not necessary for everybody to have life cover, but it is an essential tool that you have to have in terms of your estate planning.
But I almost want to add on to that. So I'm hoping that's the benefit of your channel, maybe mine. I need to be as active as you, but I'm hoping that with your channel, the one thing I'm quite passionate about is what you mentioned, educating people about these things, because I think you and I spoke about in a previous discussion, we don't get educated about this at school.
No.
We don't learn about the basics of financial planning. And I think that's why I'm hoping your channel specifically will grow, just to give the information to people out there who, like myself, never grew up with this information. It was never a conversation around the dinner table. I'm sure when you grew up, your dad didn't tell me, "Correct, let's talk about life cover today."
Oh.
And let me tell you how your payslip works.
To be honest with you, I don't think my dad knows until today how his payslip ever worked. Never mind talk to me about it.
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's why, and it's even good to have discerning opinions. I think that's even better, because good conversations come from good debate. And I'm really hoping that's why channels like yourself and other channels about finance, good channels, not looking to sell you something.
Yeah. I think actually that this is something that big investment houses, big insurance companies, you really want to do and make a difference when it comes to investing and to our population and making the country a better and richer. Start with projects where you go to schools and you go educate them for free. Make use of financial advisors. Man, I'll do it. I'll do presentations at schools. Go and speak to the kids. Not from what age? 12, 13 years old. Start young. Because our school system is not going to implement a subject suddenly that's going to teach. They think that teaching economics and business economics or accountancy, I don't even know, rekeningkunde het ons dit altyd genoem, en bedryfsekonomie, They think by doing that, they are giving children a financial education. You're not. Practical. But in any case, let me get off my soapbox. Dan het ek een vraag vir jou met betrekking tot finansiële adviseurs. Man, baie vrae deesdae, of nie baie vrae nie, baie kritiek gekry die afgelope tyd oor sekere finansiële adviseurs, hoe swak hulle is, hoe hulle mense se geld net vat en dit is net fooie en dit is net kommissie en dit is whatever the case might be. So, ek glo ons as finansiële adviseurs het baie groot rol op te speel as jy dit doen met die regte attitude, integrity en honesty. Maar natuurlik, daar is ongelukkig, soos met enige ander beroep, gaan jy mense hê wat dit doen met die regte intensies en jy het mense wat dit doen met die verkeerde intensies. Party mense doen dit want hulle wil regtig mense help, ander mense wil net probeer om vinnige geldjie te maak. So wat moet mense verwag? Of wat kan mense verwag van 'n finansiële adviseur? Wat behoort 'n kliënt te verwag van 'n finansiële adviseur wanneer dit kom by wat ek vir 'n kliënt moet doen? Wat is jou opinie omtrent dit?
Ja, so ek dink my eerlike beginpunt is dat ons het baie om reg te maak met die bedryf. Ek dink daar is 'n baie groot wanpersepsie en ek het artikels al sien wat net ons bedryf in 'n baie slegte lig sit. En ek dink ons moet verantwoordelikheid daarvoor vat en sê, kyk, daar is in die sak appels is al 'n hele paar slegte appels en pere gewees, maar ek dink as ek 'n kliënt is en ek gaan sien 'n makelaar vir eerste keer, ek sit in jou kantoor Corneille. Die eerste ding wat ek nie wil oor praat is finansiële produkte. Ek wil nie iemand met my praat oor Tiaan, wat is jou salaris, wat doen jy? Begin met net 'n geselskap en sê, hoorie Tiaan, vertel my meer van jou.
Ja.
Wat is jou ambisie, wat is jou doelwitte, waartoe jy gaan eendag? En ek dink, want dan gaan jy begin 'n idee kry vir die persoon, en ek het iets in jou verkoop, of hulle eintlik jou regtig wil verstaan, leer ken as 'n mens. Want jy weet waartoe ek op pad is, en dan deel van daai proses sal wees die ontleding, die kry van inligting, ensovoorts. Maar ek is ook baie groot op shop rond.
Ja.
Jy weet, gaan vir 'n tweede opinie, maar ook as die ou in die eerste afspraak vir jou sê, neem hierdie produk uit of doen, en dan is niks fout om te sê, ek dink jy kan dalk meer spaar of so nie, maar ek dink as die ou nie 'n volle analise ten minste doen, as 'n beginpunt het, en hy verkoop met iets aan jou, en ek het al klaar hierdie verkeerde ou, in die eerste afspraak, en ek dink net genoeg mense ook gaan doen jou navorsing, moenie uit enige ou se kantoor uitloop, as jy nie gaan kyk het, is hy by die FSP geregistreer nie, wat se dienste verskaf uit, en vra vir 'n paar kliënte, kan ek met jou kliënte praat wat al hierdie prosesse gaan dit met jou, en dan bel 2 of 3 kliënte, kry jou opinie, maar ek dink net, wees ook verskriklik versigtig vir iemand wat vir jou te veel beloof. As iemand vir jou sê, Corneille, jy het my sê, weet jy,
It sounds too good, it is too good.
vir jou kan ek die volgende jaar ten minste 30% kry.
Ja.
Die markte op 'n gemiddelde basis, as jy in aandele belê, gee vir jou best case 12-13%. So as iemand vir jou sê, ek gaan vir jou 30 of 40% gee, natuurlik klink dit te goed om waar te wees. En ek dink ook nooit moet nie jou gut vertrou nie. Jy kry 'n baie goeie aanvoel, en partykeer al is iemand nie 'n slegte makelaar nie, al vind ek nie net die aanklank nie. Hierdie is iemand wat jou beter gaan ken as jou dokter, of jou vrou, wel dalk nie jou vrou nie, maar hulle gaan 'n baie intieme verhouding met jou hê, want as jy 'n goeie makelaar het, gaan hulle elke aspek van jou lewe ontleed. Gaan kyk na jou spending patterns, hulle gaan kyk na spaar jy, hulle gaan kyk na wie's belangrik vir jou, lyk 'n testament, hoe lyk jou boedel, so hulle gaan elke aspek van jou lewe interrogeer, so maak seker jy kry 'n baie goeie gut gevoel van die persoon, nie net, do I think they qualified you the job nie, maar ook, kan ek en Corneille oor die weg kom? Kan Corneille vir my eerlike, maar ook baie keer moeilike advies gee? En ek dink dis iets waarna ek sou kyk, maar maak dit eers seker, hulle is ten minste geregistreer, die FSP is by die FSCA geregistreer, en hulle mag advies gee, as 'n beginpunt. En tweede is dan, so ek sê, wees baie duidelik op, hoe word jy betaal, en waarvoor word jy betaal? Want ek het geen issue, ek dink ons baie makelaars wat te min vra. Al eerlikheid, ek sien wat se beplanning hulle doen vir kliënte, ek sien die ure wat ingaan, maar ek dink ook net, baie kliënte weet nie waarvoor hulle betaal nie, en baie keer kom daai skok te laat. Maar ek het nie geweet. So, praat met iemand, en ek hou van jou, is jy's baie oor, dis my fooi struktuur, dis baie transparant, dis hoe ek dinge benader, en there's no grey. Daar's geen misverstande nie, so ek dink, net daai voeters, openness, honesty, integrity, know what you're in for. En as 'n ou nie vir jou reguit antwoord op iets gee nie, dan sal ek klaar begin, jy weet, en ek
Run.
Ja, en persoonlike diens, is in ons land, enige goeie besigheid in ons land, net persoonlike diens. Dis een ding al klaar, wat jy sit jouself so ver bo jou kompetisie, so daai is waarna ek sou kyk, maar ek wil net eindig met, ek dink genuine, ek sit genoeg makelaars soos jy en ander makelaars, ek dink daar is ongelooflik baie goeie makelaars, maar ek dink ook aan eerlikheid, daar is sekere makelaars wat net wil 'n produk verkoop, maar ek dink deesdae kan jy dit baie vinnig agterkom. Maar ook daar's 'n studie wat gewys het dat 'n goeie makelaar het 'n opbrengste gee vir jou 4% per jaar wat hy bylas. In belastingbeplanning, strukture, boedelbelasting en al daai tipe goeders.
Ja.
So ek dink daar's baie goeie makelaars, maar ek dink vra moeilike vrae aan die begin en 'n goeie makelaar sal nie opgee om die vrae te beantwoord nie.
Nee, absoluut nie.
Ja, dis maar my opinie as 'n consumer or client.
Ja. Nee, absoluut. Nee, baie dankie daarvoor. En ek het die vraag spesifiek gevra soos wat ek sê, omdat ek gesien het hoeveel mense het gekom en kritiek gelewer. En ek dink een van die belangrikste dinge wat enige kliënt moet onthou, twee goeders. Nommer 1, ons industrie se wetgewing is gebou op twee pilare, honesty en integrity. Dis die eerste twee goeders. So jy het die reg om met iemand te praat wat eerlik met jou gaan wees en met integriteit met jou gaan optree. So as jy nie met iemand deel wat dit doen nie, dan is dit 'n probleem. En dan die tweede ding, en kliënte gaan hiervan hou nie. But tough luck, dis hoe dit is. Jy as 'n kliënt moet verantwoordelikheid vat. Jy moet verantwoordelikheid vat, laat jy die persoon wat jy gaan gebruik, laat jy met daai persoon gemaklik voel. Jy as 'n kliënt het 'n verantwoordelikheid teenoor jouself. Laat jy nie net met enige iemand willy-nilly gaan werk nie. Dit is absoluut so. Ek kan nie die verantwoordelikheid vat as jy by 'n adviseur is wat swak deals gelewer het, baie kommissie gevat het, 'n crappy produk aan jou verkoop het, en nou kom jy na my toe en nou wil jy my aan jouself te skam doen. So kliënte, doen daai ondersoek, kry die tweede opinie, kry die derde opinie, doen dit.
Corday, so I've been quite evangelical. I think I've been one of your biggest supporters because I've seen what you've done on TikTok as a financial advisor who, if I'm being honest, and correct me if I'm wrong, you haven't had any social media massive exposure before. It's something that you weren't used to. You took on this journey of TikTok of all platforms. Just tell me quickly, we're looking at the platform of TikTok and this journey, just what made you decide to do it? What was the part of you that said, okay, I'm going to do it? And then secondly, what did you think was going to happen? And what actually happened? And what have you learned from this entire process? I know it's quite an open-ended question, but just give us an idea as to what this journey's been like, what you've seen, and just some of the benefits that you may not have even seen coming. You initially started doing this, and just your overall take on the experience.
So, as you know, my son is on TikTok and he's got quite a following. 4 a.m. Club, Marcia's Van, shout out to you guys. So Marcia's actually started this social media thing and we just saw how everything was growing. Look, me and his mum were not very happy initially with the videos because, man, okay, some flavored language sometimes, but in any case, so he started building up this following and we could see how his business was growing and improving and everything. And he then started literally nagging me. You guys get onto social media. It's going to be great for your business. And I said to him, man, I'm not interested in that. I'm satisfied with how I'm doing business, how I'm getting clients. My
business is working.
Everything is going lekker. Any case. And, but he kept on, it was like, kept on scratching. And eventually he said to me one day, he says, you know what? He says, I was a financial advisor. You trained me up to become a financial advisor. And this is the knowledge that you imparted to me. And there's such a need out there for people to understand financial products, investments, and everything better. He says, you can be of so much value to people by doing videos where you tell people more about it. And that made me think, okay, you know what? Yeah, that could add value to people's lives. So I started making my first video and I put my first video on and I was very surprised when I woke up the next morning and I saw I had 250 views. I was like, okay, that's fantastic.
How daunting was that first video where you actually have to now put your, expose yourself to the world?
So that first video took me about 12 weeks to make.
Oh, you've been 12 weeks?
Absolutely. I shot that video just about every week. I shot 2-3 times and then deleted and then again 2-3 times and deleted. And after 12 weeks, the last one I did, I literally sat in my office and I made the video and I thought, before you just go and delete it again, just post it. And that's what I did. And it was amazing. Okay, so 250 or 260 views, but hey, I couldn't believe that anybody actually saw it.
That 200 people actually swiped it.
Yes, swiped it. And then I didn't do anything for 4, 5, 6 weeks. And then he started scratching again. So yes, so then I started making one more video, but I started posting like once every 2-3 weeks. And then one morning, I walked out of my house with the two-pot system. And I was just so peeved with this new two-pot system and what it's supposed to do. And as I was walking to my garage, I took my phone and I made a video and I said, two-pot or two problem. That's what I said. And we put that, and I explained why I don't think the two-pot system is a good thing. And still today, I don't think. But in any case, so I explained in the video why I think that the two-pot system is not a good thing. And lo and behold, the next day, it was 11,000 views. And the day after that, it was 20,000 and 60,000. And suddenly, it was just exploding. And I was getting comments and questions and everything.
And tell me about the anxiety that comes along. Because you get anxious because all of a sudden there's comments, your phone's giving you notifications.
And you feel you have to answer everybody. You have to send a message.
There's a responsibility because you posted something. Yeah.
Then I woke up and one morning there's like 160 comments and how do you answer all these people? So that evening I sat down and I started answering the people when I came from work. Yeah, I sat until about 11:30, 12 o'clock. My thumbs were gedaan from typing all this stuff and I made a couple of reply videos. And the next day there was another 320 comments, and the next day, and I just
feel
realized,
this responsibility.
okay, that's it. I'm never going to get to all of this. But suddenly I was in panic stations because there's so many people that's got so many questions, and there's this absolute need for education.
And you feel this responsibility, right? Of now, I've posted something.
I've posted something, and somebody is asking me a question. I have to answer that. But when you've got 1,000 people that ask you a question, it gets kind of difficult. And so I started posting more regularly. I started posting like a video every second day. And more people started following me, and more people started sending questions. And then I started realizing how big the need was out there for financial education. So then I started making content and putting on more regular videos. And now today, I try and put at least 3 videos on per day where I answer people. And the unexpected thing that happened is the amount of people that suddenly said, listen here, will you be my financial advisor? Will you come and talk to me? It's gotten to the point where I have to basically refer people to my other advisors. I cannot attend to everybody. There's just too many.
And that was never your goal. The goal was never the goal. The goal was financial education.
Absolutely. That was financial education. So I'm blessed in the sense that I have got 9 other advisors in my company. I have personally trained them up. I know what their values is. So I can refer people to them and they can help. And yes, I do help some of the people, but not all the people. These days, I basically ask a client a couple of questions in terms of their needs and whatever before I decide whether I'm personally going to deal with them or not. So that's what happened. It was.
I wanted to unpack with you. Sorry, I mean, sometimes when you do these things, there's almost unplanned positive consequences, right?
Absolutely.
What do you, maybe on the information side, you're getting all these questions, right? And now I can imagine the questions range from divorce to how do investments work to estate planning, whatever it might be. Have you found that that's almost like a version of CPD or continuous professional development? Because you've almost got to spend this time now researching all these questions.
It is. I've learned so much from, look, this whole thing started really exploding, and I can't believe it's such a short period of time. It basically exploded from March this year, and we're now in October, so what, 6-7 months. The amount of knowledge that I've gained because of the fact that people ask me questions that I always thought I knew the answer to, but then the moment the question comes, it's like, I think I know, but let me get confirmation. It's put me into contact with a lot of different specialists. I have to speak to investment specialists and risk specialists and everything like that. I continually have to learn. I'm getting educated myself a lot more. It's given me opportunities to sit and speak to people like yourself and Francois that we met with. It's given me the opportunity to link up with a lot of other financial advisors. There's a number of financial advisors I speak to these days. about investments, that they asking questions about social media, how to get going, what to do. So I get to collaborate with a number of people. So yeah, there's been absolutely wonderful benefits. It's an absolute blessing what's happened. And now at least I think I'm over the anxiety of answering everybody. I've come to realize that you can only do as much as you can. But I do find that when I look at the comments, yes, you now and again get a bad comment and somebody that's going to be ugly and nasty and whatever. But the majority is people that absolutely just want to know more and be educated better. And then people expressing their gratitude for what has been happening.
And I think
that
that's
is fantastic.
That's the most rewarding part, eh?
That is the most rewarding part.
But I wanted to end off because it's such a powerful story. And can I just say, coming from a millennial, I don't want to classify you into a generation, but you've completely kicked my butt. Is there any almost, because we spoke about it earlier, and when you guys spoke about something else about the bad view our industry has or people have of our industry because of various reasons. Do you view this as a way that we can change it? Because I see it as one way we can change the perception. I wanted to get you maybe your view on any advice to give to any advisor thinking of taking on this journey. But also secondly, I wanted to get you to think what could happen if we got 100 advisors doing what you did?
Well, yes, I think this is one of the biggest opportunities that our industry have to go and rectify wrongs of the past. Because if you can have 100 financial advisors that honestly put themselves out there to help people, to educate people,
not for their own gain, just to educate.
Absolutely, to the we're gonna see a massive turnaround in people's attitudes towards financial advisors. So that is the absolute great and good that I think that can come from it. Yes, unfortunately, we have to accept that you're not always going to have 100 advisors that is going to want to do good. You're going to have the advisor that wants to just sell something, make commission out of it. Unfortunately, social media goes hand in hand with scammers and people getting scammed by people that use your profile pics and stuff like that. So there is the bad that comes with it. But I do believe that there is a lot more good that can come from it than bad. And advisors out there must just be willing to start doing it.
100%.
And trust me, you do it because you want to help people, the other gains is going to come automatically.
And I think if we can get people that don't just all look like us, come from the back, and we can have a more diverse group of advisors doing it, I really think we will not just change the industry, the perception, but also financial education in our country.
Absolutely.
But it's
100%.
It's been an honor to hear your story. It's been an honor to have you here. And I look forward to many more of these as you become the biggest, I think, financial advisor influencer on TikTok.
Thank you very much. I wouldn't know, but thank you very much, Tiaan. And yeah, as always, I enjoyed talking to you. It's lekker.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Kodai.
Thanks, Tiaan. Keep well.